Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to share the exact steps you need to start a side hustle or a business. Adding a revenue stream or a side hustle is the best decision you can make for your finances because the best way to grow wealth is, guess what? Not to have a fancy portfolio, is to have a simple index portfolio, as per me, but to focus on increasing your income. So I always say focus on the income first. Your portfolio and investment journey will just happen as a byproduct of you making more money, right? So it's important to also understand why are we starting a business or a side hustle. We cover that. We'll also cover the best business ideas that you can start with almost zero or a little bit of investment. So you don't need a lot of money to start these businesses that I'm going to discuss. We'll also see how you validate the idea. I've started multiple businesses over the past 12 years. I've started an agency business. I have a coffee brand. I have my own cafe now. And all of them I started with a lean validation framework. So I'll share that framework with you, how to get your MVP up and running, how to do a lean launch so that you can get your first customers, and then how to iterate and repeat. Because all of entrepreneurship, starting a business, is just about repeating things based on your learnings from your past. So those are all the things that we're going to cover in this video. It's important to start with why. Why do you want to do this? Do you want more freedom? Do you want to work for yourself? Do you want to earn more money? Do you want to escape the 9 to 5? Do you just want the feeling of owning a product or a service? Do you want location freedom, which is a very good goal that people have? Because if you work in a job, you likely have to be at least in a specific city. You have to go to the office a few times a week, if not every day, or you have to be in a certain country. But all of those things will change if you build something on your own. Now, I'm not saying that you should have the exact same reasons as me, but the first reason that I had to start my own thing was to have location freedom. And after location freedom, it was more about the money freedom, so financial freedom. And after that, it's now about time freedom, that I could own all of these businesses without having to spend too much of my time and energy on those. There's people, there's processes, there's systems that run those businesses. So starting with why is very important. There are typical startup entrepreneurs who are high scale, high growth, who want to change the world, who want to make a dent in the universe. They will basically be a different breed of people than people like us who just want a simple life, freedom, and like for me, this is the essentialist way of building a business. I don't want to make a dent in the universe, but I do want to provide value to a certain set of people, and in exchange for the value is how you make money. That's the pure equation of money. You provide value and you make money. If you don't provide value, you don't make money, right? So that's the simple thing. You want to make money by providing value. If you find a way to make money that does not give end value to the universe, to the world, then first of all, you may not like that money too much. Second of all, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to create a better world, right? So rather than thinking about making a dent in the universe, think about just creating value for the world. And it could be for a small set of people. As long as they get value, you make money, right? So think about your why. And then from there, if your why is to get location freedom, to get financial freedom, to build value for a certain set of people, then we'll go into the business ideas, right? And the best ones are actually the ones that need low investment, because any idea that needs a lot of money will eventually ask for growth and scale, which may take you into the first category of high scale, high growth entrepreneurs, which honestly is not the audience that I'm speaking to. That's a different kind of audience. But the audience that I'm speaking to is like, hey, I have this full time job. I don't see it going anywhere. I sometimes get a salary hike, and then my lifestyle or my life expenses increase to match the salary hike. And I don't really have enough to invest. I want to live on my own terms. Like, that's the audience I'm speaking to, right? So typically, you can start all of these or any of these ideas that I'm just going to share alongside a full-time job. So you don't need to really quit. Now, I don't like the extremist ideas of people that, you have to be all in, you have to quit. Those are all good for motivation videos, but in practical day-to-day life scenarios, they may not always be applicable. Now, you might be a single guy or a girl who is in their 20s, and you may have more risk-taking abilities, but there could be someone in their 30s who maybe has children and educational expenses of the children and so forth. So it's not one size fits all, right? But some of you might resonate more with the motivational talk of building something big and leaving everything and doing that. But I personally think that something that needs low investment, that can be done alongside your full-time job, and usually it can be done online without physical dependence on a certain location. That's the kind of thing which will fit all of the right pillars to start a business or a side hustle. So that's the kind of business we are looking for. So what are we looking for? Low startup cost, can be done part-time, something you can validate very quickly, and something that potentially fits your skills or interests. Because guess what? If it does not, then you're not likely to stick with it for a very long time, right? So if it fits your skills or interests, so for example, if someone who's never used a computer and you tell them to build something in AI, of course that's going to be a huge and amazing story for the media and this and that. But if they are, let's say, more into playing golf and you ask them to build something around golf, let's say a store that sells golf accessories online, they might still be able to figure out the online stuff, hiring a few freelancers because they are interested in golf. But if you ask them to build something completely different, and you ask them to spend all the nights learning about this skill, yes, that's a great story. That's an amazing story. But again, in practical real life scenarios, I want most of the people to be successful. So the content that I'm making is something that works for most of the people. Like for example, with investing, I talk about index investing because that works for most of the people. While a lot of content out there is about stock picking, which works for very, very, very few people. So what I'm trying to do is basically make it proportionate, the content that's out there, to what's going to work for most of the people, right? So the important thing when you pick a business idea is a lot of people think about that the business idea is the main thing. The business idea does not really matter. Like the first business that I started, which I made my net worth of over $1 million out of, is basically the agency business. It's not a great idea. Anyone can start an agency, but of course, in 2012, when I set up the agency, before that I was freelancing. In 2012, there were not a lot of digital marketing agencies like there are now. But still today, if I had to start a business, it could potentially be an agency. So it does not have to be a crazy idea because, again, we have to go back to the why. We are not going to change the world. What we're going to do is we're going to provide value to a certain set of people, make money in exchange for that, achieve our freedom. That's how it works, right? So you learn by doing, don't overthink. Execution is what matters way more than the idea. So these are the business ideas that I would say I would start if I had to start like all over again today. So the first one is YouTube services. So I'm really interested in YouTube. As you know, like I'm learning about YouTube, I'm making these videos. And there's a lot of good freelancers and agencies out there that help with YouTube videos. Now, of course, there are some creators who focus a lot on the quality of the video, on editing. My videos are more simple. They're more like I try to make it essential in all areas of life. So it's like, okay, I have the screen share. I can just edit it using an AI tool. I don't really need a lot of services. But yes, sometimes the thumbnails and this and that, I could still reach out to a few freelancers or they could reach out to me and I could work with them. But there's definitely a lot of creators who invest a lot on YouTube. So the more I speak to other YouTubers, I learn that they invest a lot of money into their videos, which actually gets them viral reach as well. Not something I'm necessarily looking for at this time. So yeah, if you're about to send me a message, I'm not really putting a lot of money on my YouTube channel. But there are a lot of people who are. So if I would start something, I would potentially think of the YouTuber space or anyone who has a personal brand across social media. I would target creators and build something for creators, specifically services. I love the services business because when it comes to freedompreneurship, the services business gets you where you want to be. Right. So Instagram growth is another thing that a lot of businesses are looking at. You see in India, for example, we have a lot of these D2C companies. The main thing they want to crack is Instagram, right? So a lot of their target audiences is also Gen Z. So Instagram growth service is another one. Curated newsletter is one where you could curate information about different news or different updates in a specific topic. So the more niche you go, the more specific your newsletter could be. And if there's a specific business that wants to advertise on your newsletter, you'll potentially have like revenue stream from those advertisements. Then you have the podcast editing, repurposing, short videos. So for example, if I make a long video, if there's someone who comes and says, I can make 10 short videos, fancy editing, this and that, could potentially go for that. I know a lot of people go for that. If you have a long podcast, it needs a lot of editing. Even if it's using a platform that allows for AI features, etc., it still needs work. So, those are the kinds of things people want to free up time. Now, I'm at a stage where I have a lot of time on my hands. But when I was running my agency full time, as the CEO, now I have someone else who takes care of the agency. But if I was running my agency full time, that's the time when I actually hired people to edit all of this kind of content for the agency, right? So we also had clients who used to give us podcast editing work. And that's where you can make decent amount of money with your editing skills. Now, the next is LinkedIn management. So, LinkedIn content writing. And I know a lot of people who are doing this really well. So, CEOs and busy founders and CXOs, they don't have a lot of time to keep posting on their LinkedIn. I do, so don't reach out to me. I post on my own LinkedIn whenever I want. But someone who's serious about their LinkedIn growth, who wants to hit, let's say, 10,000 followers, the first 20,000 followers, 50,000 followers, they run a startup, they run a business, they also want to promote their brand, they want to promote their business, you can offer LinkedIn content management to them. So the next is design templates. If you have the creative skill of design, or if you've cracked the use of AI tools to design, you can create design templates. There's still a big market for that. People buy templates, people buy Notion templates, people subscribe to email courses. If you are a subject matter expert in any field, make sure you're not just curating courses. Make sure that you are an SME. So, for example, I have an email/video course on growth marketing because I've spent a decade in growth marketing. Those are the kinds of people I'm speaking to when it comes to course, because there's so many low quality courses out there that you don't want to bring out another low quality course out there in the market, right? So, for example, I don't sell an investing course because there's not much to speak about. You can just invest in the index, and then you can keep your money in the index and you can focus on making money. But I do have a growth marketing course, which of course I don't speak about on this channel, but there's a lot of people who've taken my course. There's around 10,000 entrepreneurs and marketeers in my email list from the course. So that's something that works really well if you really have subject matter expertise, because I work with clients, I've got case studies, I share my case studies in the course, and I speak from all of the experience which shows in the content, right? Then it comes to, there's one-time optimization services that you can offer. For example, people who are looking for a job, they might need their profile optimized on LinkedIn before they apply for jobs. Similarly, people who are hiring, they also need their profile optimized on LinkedIn before they hire. Next, number 10, you can ghostwrite for people on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can do video repurposing. You can do freelance growth marketing, which is what I started my career with. Landing pages, business websites. People still need a lot of landing pages. So websites, I would say, is more like, okay, one time it's a project, you make a website, you're out. But with landing pages, if someone is doing marketing, they will need landing pages. Now, there's still a lot of tools that allow you to make landing pages, but they're super expensive, and often they have a limit on the traffic that you can drive to the landing page. So if someone wants custom landing pages, if they're running a lot of lead generation campaigns and so forth, that's a good place to be. Productivity accountability groups. I'm seeing a lot of people who create groups and they charge a subscription for that. There's also mini cohort classes. Again, if you're a subject matter expert, I won't recommend starting a course or a class if you don't know what you're talking about. So you have to be an expert in that field so that you can really create value in that world. So those are the ideas. Next, let's go to validating the idea. How do you validate? How do you check if people are willing to pay for this? And that's really what you need to check to validate. You don't need to check if they are interested, if they like it, if they heart it. What you need to check is, will they pay for it, right? What solution are they already using? What do they struggle with? Those are the different questions that you ask. So just to give you guys an example, I'm part of a WhatsApp group where there's a lot of e-commerce D2C founders from India, and they constantly share, what are the problems they are facing. Oftentimes it's about sales and ads and their stores, but sometimes it's about finding the right tools, right? So they say, for example, we don't have a tool for X, we don't have a tool for Y, and we don't have a service for, do you know anyone who does this service or that service? So if you find these niche groups or LinkedIn posts or even Reddit forums, they are amazing to find these ideas. For example, if you're building something in the personal finance domain or early financial freedom, retire early kind of domain, you can join the FIRE community Reddit forums. And then you can see what people are struggling with when it comes to FIRE. And then you want to have a service or a solution or a product for those people. If you're building something in health and wellness, you want to join those groups. For example, if you're building something in longevity, you can join the longevity Reddit thread and then see what are the things that people, there are people who are talking about, how do I track my intermittent fasting window, for instance. Maybe you want to build a service, you want to build an app, you want to build a community, an accountability group, anything out of that. If you're, for example, interested in that particular, let's say you're a personal fitness trainer, you want to join about weight loss, you want to join those forums, and then you want to see what people struggle with the most. Do you want to provide them coaching? Do you want to provide them an online PT session? So what are the things that you can develop from that as a service or a product or a solution, right? So most likely, I'm going to recommend to build a service first. Like that's the best way to start. But if you're experienced and if you have a tech team, for instance, or if you're a techie, you can also build a solution which could be an app or a product. Instagram polls or any platform where you have access to polls. So, for example, recently I started VietBrew, a Vietnamese coffee brand for the Indian market. And most of my early validation of the idea came from my LinkedIn polls. So I have, close to 20,000 subscribers on LinkedIn, if I'm not wrong. And I started making these polls. What kind of coffee do you drink? And luckily, my audience is all entrepreneurs and marketeers, or all people who also love coffee. So I just asked them questions, and based on that, I sourced my coffee from farms in Vietnam. I made a website, a very simple one, which I'll show you in the lean launch section of this video. And I just learned a lot about the customer from these LinkedIn posts. So you already have access. Typically, you are already in on WhatsApp. You can find some groups. You can sign up on Reddit, find some forums. So the data is all out there on the internet. You just need to know how to tap into that data, right? So look for the actual pain points and the willingness to pay. So if people just compliment you, specifically if they are family or friends, you want to stay away from that as a validation feedback. That's not real validation. Real validation comes from people who don't know you and who actually say that they would be willing to pay for something like this, right? So you have to test for willingness to pay. The next thing is the lean launch. So I'll give you the best example is because from my recent experience with VietBrew, you can go on the website and actually check this out. So on vietbrew.in, we don't have a company yet. We don't have a bank account yet. We don't have anything. So don't waste time on all of that setup kind of stuff. Like don't incorporate your business, don't start banking, don't have a legal entity. It doesn't matter. Just make a landing page, a simple website, as simple as possible. And what we did is we just had a Google form where people could select which product they want. We do have product pages, but there's no integrated checkout yet. So people just fill the Google form. This is the product that we want. And then we manually WhatsApp them like the UPI, like literally my phone number, you or my QR, and then people UPI it to me. So that's how we've built like the early lean launch of VietBrew, and that's how we got the first 25 orders. And after that, the next 25 orders, we tried to make it a little bit more automated, where the WhatsApp business account was put into play and so forth. But yeah, this is literally how we lean launched VietBrew into the market. So you don't need a lot. You see, I didn't invest in the company. I didn't invest in the incorporation, in banking, in all of those kinds of things. No payment gateway, no Razor Pay and Instamojo and all that kind of stuff. And I just use LinkedIn. So no ads. The early, like the 50 orders that we've got from the first batch of coffee that I had, which is all out of stock, was all from my LinkedIn following, right? So this is how you can do a lean launch where you have the simplest way that you can deliver value and collect money. That's the question that you need to think about. Now, VietBrew is, of course, a different business. In whatever business that you're thinking, just ask the question, what is the simplest way I can deliver value and collect money? It's important to collect money, because if you don't collect money, then you can't really say that you've validated your business idea, because people really need to pay. A lot of people say I got a 100 likes or 200 comments and I validated the idea. That typically ends up not working in their favor, because later people may or may not pay. Now, there's a difference between what people say they do and what they will actually do. So typically when they pay, that's what they will actually do. Like that's the final test, right? So again, don't try to look big. We don't have a fancy logo. We don't have a fancy website. A lot of people go with, hey, this is my first business. I want to look as cool as possible. I want the best website in the world. I want this fancy animation. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if the customer understands that this is the product that they need and they pay for it, that's all that matters, right? The next one, how do you get your first customers? So start with your own network. Like I said, building in public is a great way to tap into your own network. So whatever existing channels you have, maybe just make WhatsApp stories so that even if not your friends or family, they might know someone. Ask them if they know someone who is interested in this kind of product. So for example, if you don't know someone who's a YouTuber, you can ask people if they know a YouTuber, if you're providing services for YouTubers, for instance. If you're doing social media, let's say you're doing Instagram management, you can ask people who own a business who need Instagram support, right? So niche groups, like I said, the e-com group, for instance, that's another one. You can also do cold outreach, but make sure you do it with context. So try to do it with context, make it personalized to the person. So it becomes more of a warm outreach, even though it would still be called a cold outreach. You want to add the warmth in the cold outreach. Also, deadline really helps. So, for example, give yourself a 10 customer goal and deadline. Like, I want 10 customers by this date. And until that date, I will aggressively focus on all of these 5 things: posting on networks, reaching out to people, asking for connections, posting in niche groups, doing outreach, and building in public. Building in public works, of course, only when you already have an existing following. But even if not, it's not a bad time to start. Try to start from your personal profiles, because that's going to get much more reach than having a business page on Facebook, for instance. Or on Instagram, it's pretty much the same. But if you already have a personal Instagram profile, that's going to help more. So just start with your personal profile. I have a personal Instagram on which I've posted about my coffee. And now I've started a cafe in Vietnam. So I've started posting about the cafe as well. Yeah, it's not going to get me people from my personal profile, but it's going to get people from my personal profile to the Cafe Vung Tao profile. And then from there, at least in Vung Tao, if someone finds it, they will see, okay, there's some activity happening here. So you just want to, it's never too small. Don't try to look big. Don't try to buy followers or try to, ask irrelevant people to come and follow and all. Just create content, just build in public. Organically, it's going to grow. Now, of course, at some point, you will have some sales. You'll have your first customers paying you, and you can run some ads, and it's going to grow even faster. But initially, just use your personal profiles. You don't even have to have a business page. Right. So in the early stage, like I've mentioned, one-on-one conversational sales works the best. Now, I literally reached out to people asking how they drink their coffee when I was selling for VietBrew. I was not just selling, but I was also doing research. So when you actually talk to people, you hit two birds with one stone. You're doing research and you're doing sales at the same time. And you have to drop your ego. If you're egoistic about asking people, to sell a few hundred rupees of coffee, you have to have a long conversation with them. Back in the agency business, we used to get a few $1,000s of payments without having to talk to the client even once, or sometimes 5 figures of payments with a few calls a month. So it's a different world and it's a different business. So whatever the business is, drop your ego, have one-on-one conversations. That's going to work the best in the early stages. The next step is to iterate and repeat. So you want to learn and you want to repeat and you want to keep improving with every iteration. That's how you build a business, right? So use the lift method. L for launch. Start with something very simple, like I gave you the example of VietBrew. I for interact, talk to users, collect feedback. This is really important. One-on-one conversations. When people place an order, let's say your first 50 customers, your first 10, 20, 25, 50, 100 customers, talk to them, because those customers will give you the best insights of what you can go back to the market with. And then you make improvements. So for example, in our case, we sold the coffee and we sold the fin, which is the filter that you put on top of your cup to brew the coffee. And people had an issue pouring hot water on the fin. Now, I would have never figured that out because I use a gooseneck kettle, or the electric kettle where you boil water. It has a neck which allows you to pour water properly. But when I asked for feedback, I got to learn that not everyone has something like this, and they would often pour the water on top of the fin with another glass, which obviously leads to them spilling the water outside. So I made a tutorial for those people explaining them what are the best ways to pour the water on top. So once you're able to fix those, the next time people buy, they will have a better experience, and then you can test that again. So this is the lift loop, and you don't stop there. You just keep repeating the lift loop, keep repeating it until you find your aha moment. Now, I know, for example, for the VietBrew audience, the aha moment is when the coffee drips down from the filter into the cup, because there's nothing like that in the Indian market, right? So most of the South Indians use the filter where the coffee is in the filter. You can't see it because it's closed, and then you take it out and then you put milk on top. That's a different kind of coffee. But again, it doesn't have the aha moment of the drip by drip coffee pouring in your cup without having to have a V60 or a pour over or a fancy equipment, right? So I know the customers so well because I was speaking to each one of them. And then you improve your product. And all of this leads to the next phase of growth. So this is how you would launch and then iterate and repeat. If you had to start a side hustle or a business, it could be a simple services business. You could provide freelancing. You could offer support for businesses, for end customers. You could have a product. Of course, it's going to be harder to have a product than a services. If you provide services, then you can focus on the skills that you already have. If you're launching a product, you have to figure out how to source a product. If you're sourcing a product just like everyone else from China or Alibaba, then you will find it very hard to make a different differentiator. Versus, for example, with VietBrew, where we went to farms, found the best specialty coffee, and then got that coffee to India, because the product is what sells in that case. While with the agency, with the services business, you just have to use your skills to provide value. So I feel that the agency slash freelancing slash services is the best way to add that additional income to your revenue, right? And that's how you build a side hustle or a business. I know that the topics that we covered here are more technical from the startup space, but we are using it to build a freedom business, to become a freedompreneur. So if you enjoyed this video, I'll be happy to make a detailed series further on getting your business off the ground and cover each of these topics in detail. So let me know in the comments. That's all for this one. See you.